Hey, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvelously well. I'm back again with my friend Shelly. How are you?
Good. How are you, Warren?
I'm rather marvelous, thank you very much.
Really marvelous.
Marvelous. You've never heard me say that. Has anybody ever heard me say that?
Tomato.
Look,
marvelous or marvelous? I like this.
It's not very American, though, is it?
I feel
marvelous.
very educated. No, I feel very uneducated sitting next to you.
Just because I say marvelous?
No, because you English people from England tend, I think, speak perfectly. When they sing, you don't hear any English accent, which I find.
You know why that is? It's
No,
because,
tell me.
well, because we all want to sound American. I mean, for real, though.
But I think it happens without the singer thinking about it, doesn't it?
That's an interesting one. Wow, we're starting off with a big debate. I'm fine with the big debate. This is a good one.
Our first argument?
No, I think when I think about it now, David Bowie, huge hero of mine. I'm sure of pretty much anybody.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Definitely sang with an English accent.
Yes.
The hard A, like today, you can hear it in his.
But he's an exception. I mean, if you many of the records you hear over the years, you think are Americans singing.
Yeah.
If you don't know who the group is.
Oh, I met people now that don't know that Led Zeppelin are English. Now that might seem silly to guys like you and I who grew up listening to them, but they were around us at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, if you're listening to current music and you go back and discover those Led Zeppelin and you put a record on, it's a bunch of white guys trying to sound like blues artists.
Yeah.
You don't know if they're English or American. I get it. If you don't know the history, I understand. But you're very correct. I mean, the Beatles obviously created music, not from traditional English music. They weren't doing Morris dancing music round a pole. They weren't doing folk music. They were doing American music. And I'm sorry to talk too much, but remember Mike Bloomfield's quote that the English took American music and sold it back to the Americans.
I do.
That's what we did.
What'd you say about dancing around a pole? Did you say maypole? What did you say?
Well, it's the Morris dancers in England. They are these dancers that have bells. Seriously, bells on their like around their wrists. And in the village I grew up on, there was Morris dancers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and you go down and they would all dance and hit tambourines.
Oh, because I thought it might have something to do with the original maypole and the dances.
I think it's all it's all in the same thing.
Because that was on where I grew up. That was on our property. That original maypole, pretty interesting.
Yes, we do have that too. And but you grew up in
Massachusetts.
Yeah, so you grew up in kind of old England, new old England.
New old England. I did. But I have an interesting story about Led Zeppelin.
Please.
Would you like to hear it?
I would love to hear it.
Okay. So when I was just a young buck and working for A&R Recording in New York, which is a very popular studio, in that day, they employed engineers. Unlike now where they don't employ engineers, they only have second engineers, right?
Sure.
So they had 7 engineers there. I mean, basically the big studios all had engineers and they all specialized in different things. One guy would do Broadway shows, one guy would do commercials, one guy did jazz, one guy did rock and roll, which I gravitated towards. I always liked working with him. He became my mentor. Roy Cicala became my mentor. And so one day I get this phone, and there was really no such thing as outside or freelance engineers. Right. So one day I get this phone call, and they said, Shelly, we have an outside engineer that needs to come in and do a mix. His name is Eddie Kramer. He's going to be doing something in the mix room. Can you show him how the mix room operates? And once he's set up, you could then leave him alone and he'll finish. So Eddie Kramer comes and we meet and I show him the room and the basic layout of the board. And he puts this 8-track tape on and it's Whole Lotta Love and he's going to mix that record right there. So obviously I never heard the song because that...
Was this for the American single release? Because they put it out in America as a single. I think it was the only Zeppelin single that was put out. Is that correct? I wonder if it was.
Was it around 68, roughly?
Probably 69 or 70. 69, yeah. 69.
Right. That sounds about right. So, yes, it was, I believe it was for the American single.
Makes sense because I've heard that and it sounds different to the one that Glyn would have done.
So we put the tracks up on the board and it gets to the middle section, with it way down. And that, how it's that answer is that that answer is happening in
All
there.
the delays and the swirling.
And none of us ever heard anything like that before, you know. So I said to Eddie, who I didn't know, but he was really gracious, and I said to him, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, when Robert sang the vocal with the band, it leaked onto the drum mics, maybe the overheads. I don't know if it leaked through the board electrically or in the room through room leakage, but he said it leaked on the." So he said when Robert went to do the vocal again, it came to that section, and because it's free time and he couldn't match that leakage, and
Sure.
they couldn't get rid of it because it was on some of the instruments
That makes sense, yeah.
that worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they tried for a long time every time he would try it, it would miss it by a little bit. He'd either be a little before or a little after, and it smeared it, and it didn't work. And then after many hours of trying this, someone in the control room said, "Why don't you just do it as a call and response?" And that was it. And then that leakage, and then he answered, and then that leakage, and he answered. And it worked. And that's what we all heard. But when I heard this track that he was mixing come out of our mix room speakers, it was remarkable sounding. And he did a fabulous job of mixing that. It was really an inspiration. Anyway, I just thought I'd tell you a little story.
No, that's beautiful. I love this stuff because, you know, these kind of things are largely undocumented.
They are. And
they're usually hearsay. They're usually a guy like me hearing a guy like you telling a guy something, you know,
sure.
But to actually have somebody who was in the room.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable because we used to love the stuff that was done in England. We all used to listen to their records, and the English records, and producers and artists and engineers, and say, what are they using for mics, and how do they get that sound, and why does it always sound like you're on a ladder looking down at the drums, where American drums are more like in your face. And it turns out there's a difference in how English drummers play and how they hold their sticks and sit up more on the drum, and it's different, and it makes a different sound. But it's really a cool sound. And then there was Shep's mics, and you know, that I had never really used, but until I went and did a session in Europe, and I used it in a completely dead room. We turned on these Shep's room mics, and it sounded like the greatest room you ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understood a little more then about the difference in the mics that we used and the miking styles that we used between the two countries. But it's pretty amazing.
But isn't it incredible, you know, where you're working with an English band.
Yeah.
You're in a room while somebody's mixing an English band that wants to sound American.
Wow.
And then you've got the Stones that as soon as they got successful in England, they came to America, to Memphis, to make records because they just wanted to soak up what you guys were doing, mm-hmm. what America was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting, it's a beautiful thing to watch, like English bands wanting to be American and American bands taking it back from the English, and this sort of, you know, the way that everybody's borrowing from each other.
It's pretty interesting. I'll tell you, Time Life released, for many years, they've been releasing compilation CDs of, English bands or love songs from the 70s or whatever it might be or whatever. But I always was disappointed because there was no video to see the performances and how these people expressed themselves and how much of it was live and how much of it was, pre-recorded. And just recently on PBS, they were offering for a donation, they do that to keep the station going. They do things like this to raise money. They had two compilations. One was the greatest performers on the Ed Sullivan Show, and the other one was videos of all those great songs starting probably in the 50s or the 60s, videos from the films. And I watched some of this stuff, and what I saw Mick Jagger at 16 singing his ass off. It was remarkable. And this appeared to be all live, at least the lead vocal, but it appeared to be all live. And then there was some other really, like the Doors were on there. And they were playing live. The whole thing was live. And in that day, my point is, in that day, there were no boxes to fix your pitch or your feel or fool with your feel. You had to sing in tune. You had to be able to perform your own songs. And now it's like when it's done in the control room, well, you could sing that. I'll just pitch it later. It's another lost opportunity for an artist to learn to sing in tune.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
Song. And so when I started to watch some of this stuff, I'm going to order this compilation because it's so amazing that I remember in the day when we were mixing for songs where they would always ask, the label would always ask for the complete mix. Then they would ask for a mix minus, which is, for everyone out there, it's a complete mix with the background vocals, but no lead vocal. And the mix minus was used on a lot of the TV shows because of I guess just the ease of being able to play a track with backgrounds, but the lead singer was singing.
So you call
live.
it mix minus. We always used to call it TV mix.
Oh yeah, we call it TV mix too.
Okay, yeah.
So,
but I like that mix minus. I think we should look at Eric there. I think we should start doing mix minus. I'll send it to the mastering engineer and see if he gets it. Here's the mix minus.
Yeah, that's what I call it.
It sounds cooler than TV mix.
Yeah, I like that better. Yeah. So now I'm watching this stuff and I'm seeing a good deal of it be completely live. And you're not sure if it's live because they're playing so great.
Sure.
And the TV mixer, which these guys who mixed for TV in that day were not used to recording bands. They were used to recording people talking, and they did what they could with a band with a few microphones and stuff like that. But they were really getting some really good balances, and I could tell that when it was live because a lot of times, like the Young Rascals, had an ending on a song that wasn't on the record, and you could see that ending was what he was playing live, and you could never do that on a record. It's just the way they sort of ended as if they were in a club. And they did Groovin' and on a Sunday afternoon, and many of these really big groups were either singing over a track or they were doing it completely live. And then there was some Motown things where it was you could tell it was a lip sync because that whole production I don't think they could do, live. But it was inspirational to me. Now, stop me if I've done this on the show, but I have this theory about, and it's my theory. You can disagree with it, but it's my theory, and you're going to hear it whether you want it or not. Turn me off if you don't want to hear this theory. Anyway, so those acts that I'm talking about, where you see Mick Jagger at 16 singing like the wind, amazing. And the Beatles and whoever else is your favorite band from that time, they had their heroes. And whoever their heroes were, it inspired them. But bands from today may have the Stones as their heroes, or they may have Led Zeppelin as their heroes, or the Beatles, but they don't take the time to go back to see who their heroes are.
No, what you're saying is...
And it's diluted.
There's a book called The Sound of the City, and its whole point is exactly what you're talking about. It's written by a guy called Charlie Gillett, who I believe is Scottish, and it's a great book. It talks about all of the great cities of America, like the New York sound, the West Coast sound, obviously Detroit, Memphis, Atlanta, all of these different music, Philadelphia, all of these incredible sounds that came from these cities.
Right.
And then he talks about rock music, and he says that it became incestuous. Exactly what you're saying. So what happened is Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Jeff Beck, and Cream all listened to blues to create rock music. Yardbirds was more traditional, was trying to be more blues, but Cream was obviously the beginning of rock. Hendrix. And all of these, and Zeppelin and Sabbath, obviously, and Deep Purple. All those periods in the late 60s, they all listened to blues. They created heavy rock. Then Aerosmith listened, and I know they did because you know them as well. They listened to the Yardbirds and they listened to Led Zeppelin, and they did their version. And then Motley Crue listened to Aerosmith. So, you know, and no disrespect to any of those bands that came afterwards, but it's exactly the same point you're mentioning. It becomes incestuous, where now a band won't go back and listen to Robert Johnson and figure out why Clapton turned, you know, I went down to the crossroads and said, don't go down, like that amazing blues rock song that just blows your head off with that incredible guitar solo. That was a direct link from him listening to Robert Johnson and creating that. Now, guys like me, I bought Crossroads and learned that before I even knew who Robert Johnson was.
Oh, that's good.
So at least it's a gateway, I suppose. It's a gateway to get to the blues. But the unfortunate thing, as you're pointing out, is that incestuousness, that you only listen to a band immediately before.
Yes, and you don't get back to the roots. And I'm just suggesting for anyone out there who's inclined to go back to your heroes' heroes. It's easy to find out. Just Google interviews with whoever your group is that you like. And in those interviews, they'll be asked, who inspired you?
Sure.
And I have to tell you that I believe for a lot of you, you'll improve your craft, no matter what it is, whether it's performing or engineering or producing. And you listen to why does a guy with a guitar from 1948 keep your nose to that speaker and you can't let go and he's holding on to you? How does he do that without 27 instruments, a bridge, a breakdown, loud drums? Think about it.
Okay, so here we are. We're at, well, there's a couple of things. We're at AfterMaster studio, which is very close to being completed. You are actually using the control room. There's people working in here at the moment.
Yes.
But the live room, there's some minor tweaks to be done. We're going to do a walkthrough and we'll see some of the little, you know, things that need to be completed. But it's essentially done. It's pretty darn beautiful. Two things to note is the location's amazing. This is called Crossroads of the World.
Right.
For those of you that aren't from Los Angeles or haven't yet been here, it's on Sunset Boulevard. It's in the heart of what I would call the studio district. They've never called it that. And when I say studio, I mean recording studios. On this stretch between, well, like Highland and La Brea-ish kind of area. Gower. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Gower, of course. We have the studios that are here or were here, Ocean Way, East West, obviously United, and that they were sort of
Wally
Western
Hyder
recorders.
Wasn't Wally Hyder Studios on Ivar or something like that?
And A&M is just off La Brea and Sunset, which is now, of course, Henson, the Muppets, you know. Yes. Rusk is on the other side. And then, of course, Sunset Sound, which is just over there, other side of the street. You could throw a stone over the street and hit it.
That's right.
I mean, this stretch here is all recording. RCA was here, which is now owned by Los Angeles Recording School. So in this stretch of whatever, half a mile of was tons and tons of recording studios.
Yeah.
Which, fortunately enough, there's still a handful around. And this one in Crossroads of the World, which is, what is it? It's like kind of America's first outside mall, shopping mall.
First outdoor mall, and it was built in the 30s. And there's a one-story building over here that in the middle that looks like a ship, and it's basically the ship that took you around the world. And all the architecture on all of these two-story buildings is all different. Like it's from different countries. Looks like from the Netherlands. Looks like from Bavaria. Looks like it's beautiful here, and it's probably one of the only oases left. The only oasis left in Los Angeles. Like it used to be, the A&M lot was an oasis. It was a city block, and the parking was in the middle of the record label, and the two-story bungalows were around it. And then there's Paramount, but that's a movie lot, and you can't get on that. And then we have Crossroads of the World. So in the middle of a big city, to have this really big area here filled with cool shops and this really very cool studio. And by the way, we haven't got a name. It's owned by AfterMaster, but we don't have a name for the studio itself yet, but we're working on it. So,
But it's AfterMaster Studio for the time being. We'll
yes,
call it that.
for our conversations, AfterMaster.
And it was Graham Nash's studio.
Yes, Graham Nash. This was his studio many, many years ago. It was built in the late 70s, and it's what I call an old line design. And it's these older designs are tried and true, and they sound good. And we took it and refurbished. Larry Rickman and myself refurbished these studios so that we made them more modern while we also kept some of the older attributes about
Sure.
it. And we tried to retain what sounded good and what was a little off to us. We made some changes to make it really sound correct to us, very musical sounding.
Right.
And the
That's
first
amazing.
mix was just done in here the other day, and actually yesterday, and it was very successful. And it's exciting, to have a control room where what you hear in here is what the client hears, or the producer or the artist hears outside of here. It's a big deal.
Well, we're gonna.
That.
I'm gonna throw you under the bus, because what we're gonna do for those watching is we're planning on doing a recording in here.
Yes, we are.
And what we'll do is we'll take a band, and you and I will do it. You'll be the boss. You're going to be the boss.
That already.
Yeah. So you're going to be the producer. I'm going to work under you, and we're going to work with a band in here, and we're going to film the process.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to let people see what it's like to record with Shelly Yakus.
Nice. I like this.
And I think it'll be a lot of fun. We'll also have the files available for download so people can mix it and do all kinds of fun stuff.
So, what's interesting about having the files available, people out there are going to hear what tracks really sound like naked. And I don't use many gates, so or sometimes I don't use them at all. So there's guitars shutting off, there's clicks, there's pops, but when they're in time, it works with the music. When you take it out, sometimes it gets plainer sounding. I'm not one of these guys that like cleans everything up between every bass drum beat, and to me, it actually makes stuff smaller. But that's to me, and people who do it know how to make really good sounding records, generally speaking. But for me, I leave it alone unless it interferes with the feel or your attention listening to the music. So you're going to hear some pretty interesting stuff.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, two things I want to talk about. Obviously, we want to do a quick studio tour and talk about things. So that leads us on to, and we'll get up in a second and film this properly, the SSL. But one thing I have to say, and I'm not just saying this because I'm an SSL user, there's more people refurbishing and putting SSLs back into studios than ever before.
Yes, there's this resurgence.
Yeah, it's interesting.
They dropped these big boards, dropped in price dramatically. Not because they weren't good, but because there was very little demand.
Right.
And actually, it's really interesting and sad in some ways, but it's just a new style of working where some of these old line studios that have been around for a long time, who have big boards, whether it's a VR or an SSL or whatever it might be, the client is now coming in with a laptop with a DAW in their laptop and using the big board as a coffee table and using two faders, and everything's done in the laptop. And many of the records you're hearing are done that way. We're really, Larry and I really decided to buck the trend because we felt that we have a beautiful live room here that sounds very musical and makes a cool sound. And if we could put a board in here that people could use to record and also break out Pro Tools so they could have the best of both worlds. They could set up their faders here on the board. They could automate in Pro Tools if they wanted. They could automate. This has moving faders on it. It has automation, but you can set your faders here and you can move your faders, ride your faders in Pro Tools. You can use this EQ, and this happens to be a really good sounding board. Not all of them are good sounding. The next one off the assembly line could have been like Under a Blanket sounding. But we know this board sounds good because of its history. We paid a lot of attention to.
And this was originally commissioned for Saturday Night Live. That's correct?
Yes. A lot of laughs went through this board. But what's interesting, NBC commissioned this board for Saturday Night Live in the mid-90s. And what's interesting is when you listen to the band, the guest host and the guest bands that were done through this board, you could hear how powerful and clear and punchy and all the things that go with a good sounding board, all the attributes that this board has. And that was there for a number of years at Saturday Night Live. And then it went to Quad Studios in New York, and it went into their A room. But at Saturday Night Live, this was a 96 input board. I
was talking to Johnny Kay about it, and if you guys can watch the Johnny Kay video, I think we touched on it briefly. I think I may have actually mixed a record or two on this with Michael Brower.
Oh, interesting.
Because Brower was at Quad in that room, I think, mixing. I've just got to figure out the timeline, but when Johnny bought it from Quad, I think it was just at that period that I had just mixed one or two records with Michael. So, so that's kind of fun. I can get back onto the record, onto the console.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got it from, we were looking for a board that wasn't represented by a broker. We wanted one from a private person.
Right.
Just for our own reasons. And we were asking around, and Johnny had this board for sale.
Yep.
And at first, we didn't have a lot of interest in it because we were looking more like for a 56 input.
This is pretty huge, isn't it?
Yeah, this is 80 input, but originally it was 96. And I think that, I'm going to guess that when it went to Quad, they took off the 16 channels because you couldn't fit a board this size you couldn't fit 96 inputs in the normal recording studio.
Sure.
Probably the control room in Saturday Night Live I've been there a few times doing different acts I was working with, but for the show. But I remember them having a large control room where you could fit a huge board. But I think that we're down to 80, and that's plenty for us.
That's plenty.
Yeah, plenty.
I mean, the great thing about DAWs is we can submix things that we didn't used to be able to submix.
But you'd be amazed that when you break it out on the board, even when you do submix, that when you return all your effects onto the board,
that's beautiful,
and mix it back in, you use up a lot of faders, and it really works well. There's a lot of, this board has some unique things because NBC had certain requirements, and those requirements are not in a normal board. They're in addition to a normal board, which make this unique. And we're using some of those unique things in record making. We have the 4 faders that are the groups that are the normal groups, but then we have 4 more faders that you can patch in and out of you could ride right to Pro Tools. So you could ride something, a vocal live going into Pro Tools if you wanted to. It's not going through any electronics on those 4 extra faders.
Sure.
Just in and out of the fader.
Right.
And Gary Meyerberg, my favorite person. Gary, this is Warren.
Hey there, how are you?
Pleasure to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
I watched your stuff.
Oh, thank you.
One of the better things.
Okay, I like that. That's good.
Yeah. What was the first one I saw with Ken Sluter, one of my
I love
my
Ken.
old guy from East West.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now Gary is one of the first techs that I hired at A&M Studios when Jimmy and I were building that complex. And Gary was there for many years and has tons of experience and no substitute. So you'd like to get in here and work, wouldn't you?
It's fine, no worries. I got the key system. No, you guys are.
Well, let's do the talk through on the console and the gear over there, and then we'll move into the live room and let Gary work.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go grab my tools.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Okay, so 80 channels of ex Saturday Night Live, Quad, and Johnny K G+.
Yes.
I see you have. Oh, you know what? There's a Brocasti up here.
Yes, and they sound amazing. There's very few things that impress me these days. It's going to be Marilyn Monroe in a wet T-shirt, but this is this is pretty great.
What I like here is you got A&M chamber.
Yeah,
That's nice.
I tuned that chamber.
yeah.
I tuned up.
That was actually, I owned 2 of those chambers. I loaned it to them. Then I couldn't get them back. They're in these racks in these towers.
Really?
Yeah, 15 and 16.
Record plant 3 and 4.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Lennon plates.
Nice. So who has them? The plates?
They're at A&M. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Can you
tuned
get
all
them
of
back?
We have
Probably
them tuned
not.
up because it's 3 stories of rack. They're way up at the top.
But can we get them back so we can have the John Lennon plate?
Sure, no problem.
Let's get them back. Let's figure this one out.
Yeah,
And then
I'll
you
make
got
my
an
plan.
Mexican
yeah. It's got a 480.
480L. Very nice. 80 channels. As you can see, like we were saying about, they're in the process of finishing everything up. Gary is here to, not officially using these yet, but to try out the hearback system here. They're gonna find out which one they like best. So this is one of the ones they're trying out. So let's move over. Oh, so you're using the Apogees.
Yes, the brand new ones, the Symphonies.
Nice.
They're very good.
Did you do a shootout? How did you arrive on them?
We've all heard the other stuff,
Right.
and it's obvious that this really sounds good.
Okay, great.
And
I trust you.
we talk to people that we trust and that use them, and
Yep.
they work.
You got
And
an
they sound
antelope
good.
clock here.
Yeah. That's right.
Nice. I don't know that yet, but I hear great things.
We tried to get equipment that really helps everyone who uses this room make a better record.
That's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and that was the goal.
So so here's the broadcaster. So that's the remote for the broadcaster here.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. A good old AMS
Yeah, I
Love
that
these
thing.
for
You can do-
delays.
It's really cool sounding. It
SDE 1000.
Oh yeah,
That's like that's kind of the box. Tried and true. The chorus delay on that is amazing, and it's easy to use because it's even though there's memory points and stuff like that, there's still rotary controls. Beautiful. PCM 90. Oh, PCM 41 as well as a 42.
Right.
Now I'm feeling old because I remember these very well. I actually have a 42. PCM 70. That was kind of like the beginning of digital reverb for me. I remember when those came out. It was like,
And all
say again.
That's the Bob Clear.
The Bob Clear mountain box. There you go.
and all of these have different colors.
Right.
And different, sort of like a palette with different colors in a brush, and you can mix and match, and you can match them to the instrument you're using or vocal or what. That's why we have such variation.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's still nice to break out of the box and do stuff like this. And as you said, bring it up on faders, a whole different feel. And then you've got that feeling of being able to work on faders and sort of sculpt it a little bit more than on a mouse. Being tactile is amazing, isn't it? A SPX 990, SPX 900. You've got the SPX choices there.
Yeah, we do.
Wonderful. An LA2A.
Yes.
Tube Tech. Great.
A lot of people like that, like the Tube Tech.
I do too. Mark Ender, who I really respect, uses quite a lot of Tube Tech stuff on mixes, and he's very talented. Obligatory pair of distressors. They're the sort of Swiss Army knife of compressors.
Yes.
I think is what people always tell me. Now you got a Neve 8801, which I don't know what that is. So it's just like a mic pre EQ. Is it 2-channel?
I haven't used it yet, and I want to try it out.
Okay,
So I spoke too soon, but I don't know if it's 1 or 2 channels.
It's a single. Yeah, it's a single channel. You're correct with a lot. You've got compression, EQ. I mean,
This is like a channel strip. It's like for a Pro Tools rig. Have a good channel strip.
nice. I mean, is it modeled on anything in particular?
You know what? It's modeled. Those are basically modeled on like the
88
10,
series.
the 10 series. Class A.
Right. Right. All right, and then next up here, you've got a real mix of stuff here. So what are these?
Tone Lux.
Tone Lux.
Oh, the Tone Lux. Nice.
Right. And those knobs above it allow you to send it to those 2 meters, a stereo bus.
Oh, I see.
So you can have a direct output on each module, or you could have it go to the stereo, the outputs of your audio go to the stereo bus
Beautiful.
and mix it right there.
That's
and
great.
And then back into your board or your Pro Tools.
LA4.
Mm-hmm.
Love these on guitars. H3000.
Have to have an H3000.
Have to have an H3000.
They really sound good.
Yeah. Jack always like the detuned delay on the snare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. TCE, stereo chorus flanger, lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of gates. What else have we got? Oh, there it is. Subharmonic synthesizer. I have one of these myself. Really, really great on just that super, super lows on the kick, isn't it? Beautiful. What are these fire faces? What are these?
They're actually a recording studio in that each one is like a DAW, and you can set it with a computer so that it will work without the computer. And those are 4 preamps, and they have a bunch of inputs in the back, and they really sound good.
Okay, so next down is Summit. I love the Summit stuff, actually.
Yeah, it sounds very good.
Yeah, I've had some great results. That's some SPL. Tube Vitalizer.
How can you go wrong?
SPL make great stuff.
They make great stuff.
Yeah, really, really great
They have
stuff.
a box that actually has a knob on it that says charisma.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I'm like, oh, okay, I'm down with this.
The charismatic plugin. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Transit Designer, fantastic, obviously on drums and stuff. Are you?
Yeah.
You a big fan?
Oh my God.
I am.
So
Great, fantastic. Fatso. I've never actually used the Fatso. So many people love it, but I haven't used one. I need to get one, or at least try one out.
you like it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Dimension D.
Don't leave home without it.
Yeah, that's like the sound of the 80s chorus for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sans amp, obligatory. I to be honest, I still love these things. Just plug a bass guitar in out the other side.
Good.
Sounds wonderful. Great, 160. And then, a spatializer. Look at this. Wow.
That's from the day.
Desper products. So I've never used one of these.
It's a
Nor have I.
phase. It's a phase fandango.
A phase fandango.
Oh yeah, it'll whip things around your head. Sure. we had back in the day at A&M. Remember, Shell? We had a bunch of them, and people were using them quite a bit back then.
Yeah, I never used one myself, but yes, I remember.
Because the remote is a bunch of joysticks.
Oh, really? Where's the remote?
I don't know. Where is the remote?
I don't know.
It doesn't work with that.
Maybe that's why we're not listening to it, because we don't have the remote. I
Yeah,
have to
but it's
check
it's
this
just
out.
like a stick, and it has like 8 joysticks on it.
Nice.
We'll try it.
Back when we were surround crazy back in those days.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't know what the Behringer is down the bottom there. It's like a headphone amp or something?
You
Oh,
know,
no.
I don't know what that is.
Edison
They just stuck that in there.
processor with phase meter. Image processor. So it's another stereo imaging unit.
Yeah, some of these things I'm looking forward to trying myself.
And then we got the obligatory DAT recorder. Yowza. Which I have not actually used. I haven't used the DAT in 10 years.
No, we use it for some of the producers have music with on DATs from somebody pulls up a song from years ago that was done onto a DAT, so we have to be able to play it back.
Wow. Amazing. All right, so dynamic delay.
Yeah.
Beautiful TC electronics.
You gotta love that TC.
And then another. This one's a DSP 7000. Wow, that's a fancy one.
Yeah.
You got some fancy multi effects.
Yeah. What do you think? We're making shoes here?
And this is a refrigerator.
Yeah. The outboard fridge.
The outboard fridge. Wonderful. So let's check out the all the live rooms and everything.
Okay.
And we'll let Gary get back to doing some work.
Okay.
Yeah.
For change.
For a change.
Okay, so I suppose this is like your first overdub room.
Yes. This can be an overdub room. You could actually record drums in here. You could, we feel it's so comfortable in here that we think that we're going to make it like a living room type setting.
Right.
And people can write in here and maybe while the rest of the session is going on in the control room, people could be writing in here. People associated with the session, they have their own door to be able to go in and out without having to go through the control room and distract the people that are at the console.
Right.
And I think that how I see this working is I think people are going to write and get very comfortable in here and want to record right where they're sitting. Acoustic
Right.
guitar or electric. We're going to be able to plug an electric guitar, the head from an amp,
Right.
into a panel in the control room and have the speaker, the box in here.
Yes.
So you can adjust the tone while you're sitting in front of the mains with the player right there in the control room.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So
That's a really great idea.
We're going to hook up those lines.
Yeah. So you got mic, 12 mic tie lines there, which is easily enough for a kit the size in this room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're going to expand that to 16 just in case there are other instruments in here.
So here is the main live room.
Yep.
Beautiful. And this is all the ceiling and everything remained the way that Graham Nash had it?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, we tried to be true to, because it sounded good. We just wanted to make some changes to slant the sound to how we hear it these days. And, you know, we did that. A lot of times you try doing it, you actually ruin the room. But for us, it worked out. This room really sounds good. And it's got different sections. So on one side of this beam, the room has one sound, which means you could put drums or vocals here if they sounded correct to you. And then on the other side of this beam is a little drier sound, and you can do vocals or whatever is appropriate here. And on the other side of this beam is another sound. And then we have this booth for the piano. However, you could put drums in this booth and leave the piano out here.
Yep.
And there are so many possibilities. The studio is so flexible. And then we have another booth here, which we call the bass booth because it's dry, but it sounds good on a lead vocal, but it also sounds really good on a bass amp. So
now basically,
a lot of tools.
Talking bass, basically, as you probably are all noticing, they're finishing up in here. So there's still little things, structures and things to be finished. There's a nice step ladder in here, for instance.
There's a light switch you can throw on if
you
need any light there. With a dimmer.
That's great.
There's
like
nice high ceiling in there. So
vocal booth, and or like you said, you could put a bass guitar in here. You know, you could isolate the whole band.
Sure.
And this could be a vocal booth as well, or hey, it could be a drum booth.
Yeah, it's actually anything you want. You know, and we have here. I'll turn the lights on here.
Right.
Oops, sorry.
So
now we have a little patio outside and a little backyard. It makes it nice for the artist to be able to get away from the speakers for a while and take a break.
It's great. It's a beautiful size.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels a really, really good size. No way, there wasn't. Which band was in here just before this?
Sorry, Good Charlotte.
Good Charlotte had it immediately before you.
Yes, the brothers from Good Charlotte had it.
Right.
And they did a lot of work in here and developed their own management company and groups that they're supporting, and they really did a lot of work in this.
I love this ceiling. I love
it's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's sort of it's very Southern California.
Now there's a story here that some of this wood, especially the stuff that looks like redwood, might be cedar, I'm not sure, came from Graham Nash's his porch or somewhere in having to do with his home.
Oh.
So I'm hearing that story, but I'm trying to track down.
Where was his home? Did he have one up in the canyon?
You know, I don't know. I just hearing that some of this beautiful wood that we see, like especially in the ceiling of the control room and on the walls here, some of this came out of his property.
Well, I know Dave Crosby had a house up the street from me, didn't he? Up in Laurel Canyon.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
So maybe that could make sense. But it's a great size. It's like not too small, not too big. It's just like kind of like you can work with a band in here.
Yeah. And we have some gobos where we can move them around the room to get it a little more in the direction that the producer and the engineer might like. You know, whatever that is.
Great.
It's very flexible.
Perfect.
Really very cool.
This is really fantastic.
And we have the stone here on the wall, and I'm sure that we haven't tried it yet, but I'm sure the drums will going to sound really powerful in front of that stone.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, where where the drums would be best? It probably depends on the song. Yeah, it depends on the band.
We just started moving them around the room the other day to see where it sounded good, but we weren't quite finished enough to. But there were many places where the parts of the drum kit sounded surprisingly good, and so it's very promising.
Right.
Once that happens in an unfinished room, you know you're on the way to good things. You know.
Well, good. I suppose putting a go-go in front of that will block that glass.
Well, we'll probably have a curtain there.
That makes sense.
A little too much glass to have drums next to it.
Oh yes, those cymbals will be taking your head off on those. Great. Well, this is fantastic. Oh, and you were telling we have some photographs of the all this glass being installed, don't we?
Well, actually, what the photographs are, over the years that this has been here, since the late 70s, this glass, I don't think this glass may have ever been cleaned, or at least maybe once in all those years.
Sure.
But this piece of glass is 16 feet long as one piece, and we couldn't find a glass company that was willing to take the glass out so we could clean it. Now, there's 3 pieces of glass here. There's another one right on the side of this green felt, and then there's one with a little more room where that wood is.
Oh, I can see, yeah.
So,
and that's 3 pieces.
yes. So we took out one piece and we put the skinniest kid we had working here in here, and he started cleaning the windows on the inside of the control room side, right?
Right.
And then he was able to get the inside of the middle piece. But these 2 pieces are too narrow for anybody to get in between. So Larry Rickman, who's our CEO, and is really we're working together on the design of this place. He said, they have these magnetic window cleaners for the second story in your house, so that you obviously you can't get outside your window. So one follows the other. You dip it in, suds, and you move this magnet, and on the other side of the window, this thing follows and cleans the window. So we couldn't find one that would do this window, and then we got the idea of fish tanks have these magnetic fish tank cleaners with the fish in it and everything. So I wish I could have filled this with water and fish, but it would have been nice to look through, right?
Right.
Making a record. But anyway, so we
What if anybody's tried that?
We cut a hole up here,
Right.
and we drop part of the magnet down with a piece of special fabric and tissue that won't scratch, and we put this solution on it, and then we had a string on it so we couldn't lose it, and we had the magnet on this side, and it would just clamp like that, and we would move it, and it would start taking that film off the inside of this, which we weren't able to do, and we did it on the other side. And it took quite a while, but we got this window clean without taking it out.
Wow, that must be a powerful magnet.
Powerful magnet, like this thing goes like that,
To go all the way through this glass.
And they have, this is like 1/2-inch glass, and they have ones that are so powerful that they come with a 1-inch block of wood between the two, and it says right on the instructions to not get your fingers in between this when you take that wood out.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but it really works, especially, in a fish tank, it's easier because it's always wet, and it cleans the algae and it follows you, and
Sure.
it's pretty remarkable. It took a while and a lot of patience, but there was no other choice.
Right.
No one knew if this glass would shatter if they tried to.
Yeah, nobody's going to get in that little narrow piece
Oh,
there.
no, we tried everything.
I can see the kid getting in on this slightly wider area here, but between there, maybe Eric, you could have got in there and wiped.
Well, we tried all sorts of things, and then what happened was that inside here over the years also got a lot of light-colored dust, which you could see. So we had to take a shop vac and keep adding extensions till we had about 10 extensions, and we could reach all the way down there from that hole up there and just carefully try to clean everything up, And we did. It just took time.
Fantastic.
We got a great crew here, there's some great guys that work with us.
So the guy we've been talking to off camera is Gary Meyerberg. How are you, mate?
Great to see you.
Good to see you too. Now, Shelly gave me a little bit of background.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you guys start working together?
I met Shelly when he hired me at A&M Studios in 1985.
85.
Yes.
Nice.
And he put together an amazing group of technical people. Basically went to every great studio and just stole them all. And so it was an honor to be part of that team and, do the whole, early to mid 80s resurrection of A&M.
So that's when they took over A&M in that year.
Yeah, when Shelly and Jimmy went over there.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what was kind of the big, well, first of all, off camera, we were talking about taking the plates from, what, Michael Plant over there?
Yeah. A&M in the day had like 18 plates.
Wow. That's a lot of plates.
And they were in these big 2-story bunkers, and they were racked 3 tall, literally hanging in racks. And my part of the claim to fame back then was that Shelly tasked me to retune all the plates. But it's an art, and it takes time to learn how to do it. So you sit down with, okay, I tuned a plate, and you sit down, and he goes, oh, what did you do? And then and finally you learn how to do it. So I ended up retuning all 18 plates and all the chambers over there.
How many chambers do they have over there?
Back in the day, we had 6.
Do you think they still have them all?
Yeah,
or?
I'm pretty sure they. I haven't been there.
I haven't worked in Henson as it now is. I haven't worked in Henson in a few years, so I can't remember if I used any of the chambers there or not. I seem to remember a plate when we were doing strings on a Frey album in like 2005.
Yeah, I don't
6?
think I would be very surprised if much has changed.
Right.
But it's been a long time.
All I remember is walking down those corridors and they had those mellotrons just sitting in the corridor.
Oh, yeah. Well, I left there to do cello in 1999.
Oh.
So I haven't really been back there since then.
Cello.
Yeah, I did cello with Candace Stewart.
Yeah.
And we did that. We had that as our own for the entire time I was there. The owner was absentee, so we ran it as if it was our own. It was good fun until the owner called up one day and closed it.
Oh, wow. And now what is cello?
Cello's East-West now.
East-West.
And I went back and rebuilt it.
So you're back into East-West?
No, I did that years ago. So
okay.
that's many years ago now. So I was at East-West up until 6 years ago.
Great.
Yeah, we rebuilt the whole thing. It had fallen into disrepair and the roof caved in.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, we should do another story on that. It's a long story, but yeah, everything got rotten. There was 4 inches of water in the facility for like 3 months. And
it's terrible.
100% humidity. All the transistors rotted off of all the boards. And green mold on all the outboard inside out.
So you did a lot of repair work on that?
It was 26 months, including the Philippe Stark design.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That was interesting.
Yes, I've been back with all the horses and
all the French stuff.
Right.
Call that.
Yep.
But it was great to be able to go and save it after the whole thing and resurrect it. And then when I was done, I had a parting of the ways, and
right.
I bailed to Maui for 6 years.
And what were you doing in Maui?
Actually, I really thought I was going to reinvent myself, but wherever you go, there you are. So I built a studio out there.
What was the studio called?
It's called A-La Recording, and we had Paul Wolf build us a custom Tone Lux 32-channel desk, a real desk.
Great.
Radars, and just massive amounts of analog gear and lots of 500 rack stuff.
Do you still have the studio?
My friend Tom is still out there making records. Yeah, we did a lot of very cool people out there. Was with lots of, the island's full of amazing musicians.
Absolutely.
And, Chris Christopherson's out there, and Willie Nelson and his kids are out there.
Mick Fleetwood's out there.
My very close friend Bob Rock is out there. So the last thing we really did out there was we cut all the guitars for the Cult record, the new Cult record out there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was a lot of fun with Billy.
I would love to be find an excuse to go and make records in Maui all the time. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. So that was good. But my main thing is I got to learn radio. I'd had no interest in it, but I needed to have a gig out there. And so I got offered a job to replace this guy that's been there since 1958. He's 90 years old this week. And he was my mentor, and he taught me old school radio with the old transmitter, 25 kVA, big FM and AM, and climbing towers and doing all of that. So I did that.
Fascinating.
So that's what I did for 5 years there. And then doing the studio, it's very, very old school. Yeah. I'd make a record at the studio, go to the DJ at the record at the station, go play this because I'm going up to the transmitter, and the consequences if you don't play my music on the
radio. Your version of payola. If you don't play my song,
I don't know what's going to happen to the radio.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was not enough being on Maui. There's no challenges.
Right.
And my parents got older, and my family and my son, people need me. So I figured, you can't take things for granted. You got to get back to the family and what's important.
Sure.
And so I started coming back to LA about 6 months before I was planning on moving, trying to see if is there any, I mean, I'm a peripheral support person. These days, Pro Tools, the infrastructure is the engineer.
Yeah.
You are your infrastructure. You support people and all those, it's obsolete. So I wasn't sure how I was going to come back to LA and make this all work, and I just came back, seat of my pants, went to AES, went back to Maui, put my truck on a boat, came back, and then the next thing I know, a mutual friend of Shelly and I, actually the guy that got me the gig at A&M, Mark DeSisto, called me up and said, you should call Shelly. Shelly's in hell, he needs your help. And so I said, oh, God, I haven't talked to Shelly. This will be great. Like old times. And so I called Shelly, and the next thing I knew, my first day back, I'm commissioning an SSL 4000.
That's fantastic.
Which was just like, I never in a million years would have thought that. And then some other situations came up. And like 23 years ago, I built a studio in the Valley. Ciccarelli and I called Royal Tone. And then it became Linda Perry's place, Kung Fu Gardens, I believe. And now Francisco bought it. And he hired me to be the chief tech over there. So
that's fantastic.
I landed at Sphere, and it's very strange to be in that building.
I'd love to go over there and do a tour of that place.
Absolutely. I mean, but 23 years later, to like being in my shop that I designed, like, because I got to design my own shop. I got to design the whole place and do all the stuff with Joe and Alan Sides, actually. And so, and it went bad, like things do. And so I never thought in a million years I would ever
end up back there.
And now I'm back there, and it's fantastic. Francisco's amazing, and everybody there is really enthusiastic, and it's just first class.
To be able to do that with Ciccarelli, because Ciccarelli is one of my favorite engineers ever.
Yeah, well, he's been one of my closest friends since like 1984.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I mean, his work is superlative. And he's so humble. We interviewed him just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
So I work at Sunset a lot. And so I just walk out of a room and boom, oh, look, Joe Ciccarelli.
Yes. He loves that place. And I think, for me, being like a technical person in the production, I'm a musician and an engineer. Shelly he didn't want solder jockeys walking in the room, right? He wants guys that are of the process.
Solder jockeys. I love that phrase.
There's two kinds of support people.
Yeah.
There's people that make records, and you're in trouble, and they'll come in and help you make your record. And there's a person that you put the module on the bench and say, fix the cab.
Yeah.
I'm both of those people, but also, whatever construction, facility design, Royal Tone, business up, did the whole thing.
Great.
Same thing with East West and with cello. So it's kind of a global studio guy.
That's great.
And I'm just kind of really surprised that I'm back in this business, because I just came back to the mainland and was like,
you can tell a guy who's lived in Hawaii when he says the mainland.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm of that place now.
Yeah.
My daughter's still there. She took over my spot. So I kind of still have a little toehold.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But I have no regrets. I'm very happy to be back in LA. I've been, we have a really, as you know, a very tight community, music community, which is like family, because most of us have been together like for this long, whether it's, I was just at Barragon's for the Universal, we have a lunch every Wednesday, and it's like, we had like 30 people there today.
Oh, it's wonderful.
So many people were there. So there's great community and family and food and things that are important to me. And so I'm really happy to be back. I have no regrets, and I'm very also kind of, I'm just surprised, to be honest with you, that I'm doing this and I'm doing the Sphere
So
thing.
wait there, when did you come back here?
I've only been back since a week after AES.
So I went to Maui on vacation a few months ago, just a couple of months ago, and I am walking into LAX to get on the plane, and Shelly calls me and he's like, "Do you know anybody? Is there any texts or anything like that?" Because I remember he was just a couple of months ago, he was like freaking out.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I came into a situation.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, and here you are.
Yeah, but that's what I'm all about. You know, I'm not about it being smooth. It's the years ago when I was working for Chili Peppers, their guy named me Gary the Cleaner, like the professional, the guy that comes like with the satchel of acid, make sure there's no blood left. Yeah. And so that became my email address, it's Gary the Cleaner.
That's a Pulp Fiction reference for anybody.
For anybody, or the professional, depending on your age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of my gig, and to
Yeah.
just bring it all down and make sure everybody gets back on the creative track and doesn't get sidetracked by,
Yeah.
the process must be transparent. That's my mission. And
Beautiful.
so, that's what it is. And yeah, I'm thrilled to be. I mean, he's a fly on the wall sitting here as me and Shelly are yakking back and forth about all these things. And the funny thing I was talking to him about the other day was, it's been a while since Shelly's done a studio, a while. And I learned like so much of what I know from Shelly building those studios at A&M. So it was almost like the master apprentice master, like this, it's like he fed me all this stuff. And now we're here hanging out. It's like I'm feeding it back to him and getting like this, getting like the spark. Oh yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like we're building a studio again. And it's
amazing.
It's he's been my hero for my whole life. So I mean, even when I went to A&M and I was like sitting there for the interview, I was like stunned. I was always a kid reading the credits. It was all about the credits. So,
Oh, I'm the same way.
Yeah,
now the poor kids there's no credits. There's a photograph this big.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
On Spotify or iTunes or whatever. This big.
And it's hard for cats, man, because it's like you could make a great record, and in the day, the people go, "Oh, who made that?" And then they call you, they give you a gig.
Yeah.
Now nobody can know; it's all hidden. I mean, we were having meetings at Tony Shepard's breakfast thing, and we were talking about how because we know like Apple has the metadata. I mean, when they actually got the initial stuff, they have the credits. They just won't put anybody to like make a little pop up when just a little pop up on the screen. They have it. They just won't do it.
Sure.
So,
well, you can download the booklet, but nobody looks at it.
yeah, the kids are listening left pod, right pod. It ain't like when we grew up. So it's
Right.
I just it's a tragedy. I try to look. I have 3 kids, and they're pretty old school. But again, it's hard to express to them what it was like. When there was only like 3 things to interest you in your life. You didn't have this massive thing. You had music, sports, drugs, girls, I guess.
Well, I mean, that was kind of where my brain was going when you were talking about this, because I think to myself, I've had this conversation with, because my brother's 10 years younger than me, and I had 400 albums by the time I was 14.
Exactly.
By the time he was 21, he had 40.
Right.
Just that 10 years. And the difference is he had PlayStation. I didn't.
No.
He had like PlayStation 1 or what was one of the early ones? Dreamcast?
Oh, of course. Yeah,
He had like the early things. And I didn't have any of that stuff.
Yeah,
my generation was
not either. I'm going to be 56. So in my day, it was Pong.
It was Pong. Yeah. That's what we had. We had Pong.
Yeah. So it was like.
We had Pong. So, and in fact, my family didn't have Pong because Pong was like $400.
Right.
When I was a little kid.
Yeah.
It wasn't like now where it's an free app on iPhone.
No,
on iPhone.
I mean, there's just so many things to distract kids from the music.
So in their defense, it's like my entertainment was buying a magazine, watching Top of the Pops, the only music show that I could watch in England, and then a couple of others came in, The Word, all these different other ones. But essentially, it was Top of the Pops when I was a little kid, Enemy, Melody Maker, Sounds,
of course,
and a couple of only a couple of music magazines. And going to record stores and asking dumb questions of the guy behind the counter.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I would walk out with like a pile of records. I mean,
you'd always go to the record store to buy one album.
And then walk out with a pile.
But you'd never come out with the one that you went to buy there.
Probably not.
I really want to go and buy it. Oh, but what about this instead?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
And I go out going, I went in to buy the new one. Oh, God.
That's just an experience that's lost now.
Yeah.
It just really is. But, hey, we were there. So
we were there and we were blessed, but I also think that there's a beauty in the immediacy and the value that they have. That younger generations have. It's just up to us to be mentors and help.
Yeah, I think I have more optimism coming back than I did when I left.
Right.
In other words,
That's
6
fantastic.
years ago, it was looking pretty grim. I mean, I was my option really was okay. Well. If I'm not going to be doing the East-West thing anymore, then I can do the same thing for half. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, half? The world's my oyster. I'm moving to Maui. For half, I can do anything. If my income's going to drop at half, then I have the whole world open to me. It's not like I'm not looking at it as a negative. It's just there's new options.
Sure.
It's all a new thing. And then, through the years, just lots of friends of mine, because I moved, I left the business. Then all of a sudden I'm getting lots of feedback from lots of, platinum record guys that are, we're emailing and talking back and forth, and everybody's, it ain't what it used to be. The decimal point, we used to be on this side and now we're on this side. So people are not making money, and how do you do it? What do you do? And, I didn't have any advice, because I really thought that I would reinvent myself. But the lesson I learned is that wherever you go, there you are, man.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're my age.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reinvent myself.
Sure.
So, coming back to LA and seeing these big desks all of a sudden going in, talking to my buddy Bruce, said about, 2.5, 3 years ago, all of a sudden people started buying desks again.
Yep.
And there's some really great music going on in town as far as rock and roll bands go.
There's good music. It's coming back. Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen like in the mass thing, because the corporations have their widget, so they don't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But for me as a production cat, I'm excited about being back in LA. There's a lot of good music, a lot of good rock bands going on right now. And, and part of my deal, when I went to get my gig at Sphere, I looked at Francisco and I said, well, dude, the other thing is I need to have access to the rooms. And
right.
Like, I never had a tech ask me for access to them. Well, that's because I'm not just a tech. I got to use the rooms and track and bring bands in and know my rooms so that I can, serve your clients better if I track a band and mix and know what everything is going on. So, being back in LA, it's exciting to be able to find a band and see what the hell's going to happen.
I'm the whole time you've been talking, I'm reminded of something. When I first moved to LA, I come here like every English guy. I came here in the mid-90s, and all I wanted to do was have big American muscle cars. I grew up on Starsky and Hutch.
Okay.
So I just wanted an El Torino, I wanted a Mustang,
sure.
And I went through like a Delta 88, I had a Mercury Monterey with the rear, and then I had a 67 Le Mans. I just had muscle car after muscle car. And along with muscle cars comes having to find yourself a decent mechanic.
Oh yeah.
Now, luckily they're not like electronic engine management systems and stuff.
No, it's a brute force system, yeah.
But you do need a good mechanic. And I remember burning through a lot. And I found this one guy, he actually was English, just coincidentally, but I found this one mechanic. And I remember I had this car and it was leaking oil. And I said to him, my car's leaking oil. And he's like, okay. So he comes in and looks at the car and he fixes a couple of things and presents me with a bill for like $300. And I was like, wow, that's not very much. You fixed all these things. And I said, what about the oil leak? He goes, well, tell me about the oil leak. I was like, well, once every 2 or 3 months, I have to put a liter of oil in there, between oil changes. And he's like, and?
Right, it's an old car, yeah?
It's an old car. He's like, I can fix it. I can take off I can take it off and put a new head gasket in and try and realign.
And then you charge $2,400.
$2,400 to save you 2 liters of oil a year.
Yeah. Exactly.
And what I learned from that lesson, and what I want in life is what you're talking about, is like when somebody comes to you, you want more than just to fix that knob.
Oh yeah.
You want to know, why did it break? Mm-hmm. Is it even worth fixing? Well, you leave it all the way panned to the right. When's the last time you panned it left? Oh, I've never panned it left, but it's not. You're like, you know what I mean? It's like, when somebody comes to me, especially the young artists, and you'll understand this, young artists, or not even young, but an artist will come to me and go, I want to do hip hop. And then start talking like this and I'm like, why aren't you doing country? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
There's plenty of people that will take that artist and do a really bad hip hop record with them. But the people I value are like what you're talking about. What you do is somebody comes to you and say, I want to fix this. And you're like, I don't know if it's really a problem. I'm going to have to find out what the problem is.
Yes.
And that to me is like, that's worth, your weight in gold, because there's a lot, it's like the plumber. If you had the plumber come over to fix the thing and they just rip it all out and put a brand new one from Home Depot.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, well, I just wanted that little thing rethreaded.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an interesting world right now, and I'm really curious to see what the next year holds as far as the clients. They just finished up Lincoln Park over at Sphere.
Great.
So I haven't really even been able to get into the tracking room.
Right.
They've just been in. So I'm super excited about next week being able to get into Studio A and check it out.
I've got to check that out because Lincoln Park were at NOG for years, so they're going over to Sphere. That's quite a big deal.
I don't know, I don't know what the loyalties thing lies anymore, in the new business. And loyalty was a huge thing for me. A&M, cello, East West, that was what I based my whole thing. It only goes to a certain level, because one of the things I learned when I built Royal Tone is that it's huge for people to come over the hill.
Right.
So when I left A&M, I was like, I'm going to bring all my A&M clients over here. And I ended up getting a few, but the ones that I got, they either lived on the hill or they lived in the valley. It's very hard to get people. So I started realizing that studios kind of have captive regions. The Village is kind of captive for the West Side, right? Conway artists ain't going to go to Village, right? You got, people in Hollywood aren't going to go to Burbank.
Right.
It's just the way it is in LA. So, it was a big lesson, because, I was pretty cocky thinking I was going to get on. It's like, Joe, why aren't you going to come over to the valley? I ain't going to go over to the, it's like, I ain't driving over there.
Right.
And so that was eye-opening. And so the loyalty thing only goes so far. Traffic can break that in a minute.
LA's a weird one with traffic, isn't it? Because
it's gotten a lot worse, yeah.
It's got a lot worse, but it's, where I come from, if you're driving around London, this is nothing.
Oh,
yeah.
No, granted.
Yeah. But once you live here for a while, you're like, oh, really? I don't want to sit in traffic.
Coming back from Maui, it's I have a real perspective because of being gone so long.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I would come back, every 6 months or a year or something like that. But to think of what it was like back when I left 6 years ago as compared to what it is now, I could have never imagined it being this bad. And now, looking at all the cranes in Hollywood, the streets aren't getting any wider.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
Because this is obviously part of the studio tour. What were sort of your challenges here that you have or had that you've overcome?
Well, I think that the biggest challenge has been that the SSL has a lot of mod features.
Oh, it does?
It does. It has an additional stereo cue.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it's got an additional stereo cue, but it also has the Bluestone mod, so that I can pop this in. If I push down that pan pod up there, the last, you see how the gray ones of the routing, those become separated. Now those are actual cues. They get talk back and they get everything else, and so you have 8 individual outs off of the pod.
Wow!
So that you can actually and still use the routing. It's just that when you push that button, it breaks off the last.
Was this for headphone mixes, independent headphone mixes?
It was. You know what? It was for lots of different things. Initially, we had developed this back many years ago. Shelly and Larry had a company called Q Sound.
I remember Q Sound.
Yeah. And so we needed a way to get into the stems into the system, and so we took the Studio D console at A&M, and we did this mod where we broke out those 8 so we could get out there, and then SSL took that idea and created the Bluestone mod so that you could use individual cues, that you could dump talk back and stuff into those.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Into those buses. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never.
So you got stereo cue, you've got the Bluestone mod. They have a huge buffer rack because they were doing satellite feeds and lots of separate stuff. This console is actually designed to be. There was two stages, so we had 1 through 48A, 1 through 48B. Right. And so that's how all the numbering works on this. And then we have these crazy small fader mute groups, which are another feature that people don't have. Additional, we have actually 8 patchable VCAs in the desk. So there's a lot of stuff going on that wasn't working. And so, we had, you had to kind of stop. There's no documentation for this actual desk other than the book.
And there's 16 groups here.
Well, basically what we have here, these are VCA groups.
Oh, I see.
So these are always the VCA groups.
Yep.
Usually on an Ultimation desk, you get 4 patchable stereo VCAs.
Yeah.
This desk, you get 8.
Oh, so that's 8 stereo. Oh, wow.
8 patchable stereo VCAs. Yeah. And then these other. Usually this whole section isn't here. Usually this whole section is because this is an added mod. That's all Bluestone and Stereo Q2 modification stuff. So you have this whole extra section.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so the uniqueness of the desk, and also just I came in making assumptions that were wrong. Nothing was hooked up. No mic lines. Nothing was hooked up external to the desk. So then it was like, Okay, let's test it. Oh, it's not hooked up. Oh, okay. So stabbing DLs for, a
Sure.
week and figuring out, the wiring and stuff like that. And so now we're just at the tail end of the last quandaries. And we're at the Q system level, and we're
Sure.
trying to just, all that stuff wasn't thought about.
Well, we're hoping to be tracking by the end of January this project.
No worries.
Shelly and I. So.
No
Okay,
worries.
good.
Shelly's leaving town, and he's left it to Gio and I to just get it done.
Great.
So he's given us.
Because we made a promise on camera that we're going to do this.
It's going to happen. And I'll make you a promise that it'll happen no matter what. We'll make it happen. So
Fantastic.
that will definitely happen.
Wonderful.
And I look forward to it.
All right, great. Well, thanks ever so much.
A pleasure to meet you.
Good to
Thank
meet you
so
too.
much. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
All right.
So thanks ever so much, my friend.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
This is going to be fun. We're going to do the band recording. We'll come back here a lot of times. We'll be doing a lot more stuff.
I'm ready.
Okay,
this band
good.
recording sounds like a lot of fun.
It does, and you'll love the band because, and the viewers will know it's a band called Robert John the Wreck. I haven't even asked them yet.
I'm sure
We
that,
decided an hour ago. We haven't even asked them yet. They'll know by the time they watch
you
this.
know, they may not want to have anybody hear them play by themselves with their bandmates.
No, that we did. The reason why they're perfect is we did a record with them at Sunset Sound in a day, a whole album.
They can play.
They can play.
That's
We did 10
incredible.
songs.
That's how the Beatles did it at BBC.
Exactly.
For the
Well,
TV stuff.
Well, on Abbey Road, they did it in 17 hours, wasn't it? Or 13 hours, or whatever it was.
Crazy.
Yeah, so basically, I know that they can play live and they can do it. So it's perfect to show off the studio and perfect for you, quite frankly, because they're all monster musicians. You'll love them as players.
Very cool.
They're really, really cool
I
players.
can't wait.
Yeah. And now, once we finish this, I'm going to give them a call and say, hey, you want to come and do this thing? They've already said yes by the time you watch this, or else it'll be
That's
edited out.
Yes.
So if it's still in, they said yes. All right. Thanks ever so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So thank you ever so much for watching. Hope you have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Please check out ProMaster. That is the company we've been talking about, AfterMaster Recording Studios. Larry and Shelly, with the team of developers, have come up with some wonderful ways of mastering, which is massively A, inexpensive, and B, does great results. And as you were talking about before, you could take like elements of your mix, stems, and master them and rebuild it and get like incredible mixes.
Yes, and you could also take the 4 that we give you back and edit choruses and verses from different masterings and put it together. Very effective.
So we're going to get more into that in future videos. We'll do some stuff where Shelly will show us how he uses it. But in the meantime, check it out. See what you think. Leave us a bunch of comments and questions below as ever. And of course, if you have anything to ask Shelly, I will try and pull him aside and ask him directly. Throwing you under the bus there.
You paying for lunch?
No,
I can
Gary
see
is.
that,
Gary's playing. So have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.